The story opens with the title page introducing the ascendance of a bookworm and the Book of Days. Mine recalls a book from her past life as Urano titled The Book of Days, realizing it is simply a diary used for daily records. She muses that each day stacks up to form a single book, creating history that would vanish if books did not exist. Mine reflects on the time she shared her memories of a world brimming with books with the High Priest. She realizes that if her past book-obsessed self had been more like her present self, she could have empathized more with the fleeting happiness of her loved ones. In a vision, the High Priest watches a woman purchasing a diary and questions why she is staring at a blank book. He notes that normal people use these diaries to write about daily events, while Mine deduces the woman is just an ordinary student. The High Priest dismisses the practice as trivial, unable to understand wasting expensive paper on such mundane matters. Mine counters that a diary is a catalog of precious treasures, just like the reading journal she used to keep for herself. The High Priest stares intensely at Mine, acknowledging that these memories are indeed treasures. He softens his gaze and agrees that if the memories make her eyes sparkle so brightly, they must truly be valuable. Arriving at the Gilberta company, Benno introduces Mine to Karina's new baby, Renata, while Mine coos over how cute she is. Narrating the timeline, Mine reveals that Karina gave birth while she was secluded in the temple. Mine observes that Benno, despite his dry claims, looks at the baby with a heartwarming expression of paternal love. Catching her stare, Benno awkwardly deflects and tells Mine she should be looking at Renata instead of his face. As Karina excuses herself to feed the baby, Mine wonders about Liz, the woman Benno vowed to remain single for. A flashback reveals a younger Benno holding a dying Liz, telling her not to say she will be fine because it is not that simple. Mine wonders what words Liz would have left behind for Benno if she had lived in a world with easy access to paper and ink. Snapping back to reality, Mine presents a congratulatory gift she brought specifically for Renata. Benno opens the book and is immediately confused by the blank pages and simple lines. Mine explains that this is a diary where the lines are for dates, calling it the seed of a new book. She suggests that Karina can document Renata's growth daily until the child learns to write, though Benno initially calls it nonsense. Mine lists examples of what to record, such as the day she smiles, takes her first steps, or starts working with Benno. She argues that even after Benno passes away, he will continue to exist within the pages of Renata's diary. Benno pauses solemnly, struck by the heavy thought of what happens once he passes away. In a flashback, Liz apologizes to Benno, regretting that she won't be by his side during the difficult times after his father's death. Liz wishes she had been a musician so she could have left behind a comforting piece of music to cheer him up after she was gone. She realizes that even if one isn't a musician, anyone can write about mundane everyday moments, a sentiment Benno now understands. Benno gazes into the distance, wondering what kind of words Liz would have written about their time together, like her failed soup or the flowers they admired. Returning to business mode, Benno pats Mine's head and suggests that selling diaries is worth considering since they require very little ink. Mine narrates that she will soon leave her family to live as a noble, but writing down her memories will leave something for them to remember her by. She smiles, believing their worlds will stay connected through books, though Benno doubts anyone would actually buy blank ones. Mine suggests adding proverbs to the pages, explaining the meaning of "Rome wasn't built in a day" to a curious Benno. A heartwarming image captures the joy of a warm embrace, setting a cheerful tone before the winter chill sets in. Mine wakes with a gasp of pure wonder, convinced that a miraculous transformation has taken place outside her window during the night. She sprints toward the blinding white expanse, her heart racing as she mistakes the snowy landscape for a field of pristine, untouched paper. The fantasy shatters the moment she touches the freezing ground, leaving her to grumble in bitter disappointment that it is merely snow. Lutz drags her back to reality with a plan to head for the south gate, while Mine mutters about frying her brain by covering the white world with words. Shielding her eyes from the glare, Mine steps out into the contradiction of a sunny sky and a snow-covered ground, ready for the day's journey. Their walk is interrupted by a familiar duo as Mr. Otto and Benno suddenly appear, greeting the children with suspicious timing. Lutz confronts his father, venting his frustration at being left behind just because he overslept a little. Mine scolds the adults for their ambush, pointing out that tossing a snowball out of nowhere is dangerous, while Otto sheepishly explains they were just nearby. Lutz brushes off the surprise attack with a forgiving smile, and Mine politely thanks the men for stopping to say hello. Otto laughs nervously as he confesses that his aim was off, admitting he targeted Lutz's feet but accidentally scored a direct hit instead. Irony strikes hard as a second snowball smashes into Lutz's face right as someone comments on the lack of snow falling from the sky. Benno exudes a terrifying aura as he apologizes to Lutz, suggesting with a dark smile that they settle this grievance with a physical conversation. Otto goads Benno into the fray, mocking him for letting his true feelings leak out and urging him to let Lutz destroy him in a fair fight. The truce dissolves instantly as snowballs begin to fly, turning the peaceful meeting into a chaotic free-for-all where no one is safe. The skirmish escalates into a declared war, with the combatants agreeing to a serious three-way showdown to settle the score. Mine sits on the sidelines in disbelief, sighing at the pathetic sight of two grown men bullying a child who is destined to lose. Panic sets in for Lutz as he realizes the odds are stacked against him, and he screams for Mine to provide some kind of backup. Mine cheers him on from the safety of the wall, pumping her fist to give Lutz the fighting spirit he needs to wind up his pitch. She marvels at the sheer hatred packed into the snowball Lutz creates, noting it looks particularly angry. Lutz hurls his weapon with all his might, but the attack ends in a pathetic plop, forcing him to apologize for the failure immediately. Karma strikes back instantly as a snowball connects with a satisfying smack, eliciting a cry of pain from the battlefield. The battle spills over as a stray projectile whizzes toward Mine, prompting a frantic warning for her to dodge the incoming fire. One of the fighters complains that the last hit caused actual pain, regretting the decision to turn this into a serious showdown. The violence continues unabated, the sound of heavy impacts echoing as the snowball fight turns brutal. Benno's expression hardens into a merchant's glare as he accepts the escalation, vowing to stop holding back against his opponents. Lutz is so pumped full of adrenaline that he claims he can no longer feel the cold, ignoring Mine's concern for his safety. Otto narrowly avoids a vicious throw, taunting Benno by asking if he is willing to bet his marriage to Karina on the outcome of the game. Benno abandons the offense to shield Mine from a stray shot, screaming at Otto for his recklessness while the traveler frantically apologizes. Mine thanks Benno for the save, but he brushes off her gratitude, refocusing his attention on the snowy battlefield. Otto stares in confusion at the white lump, asking what kind of snow monster it is supposed to be. Mine cheerfully corrects him, declaring that it is actually a cute snow rabbit. Otto apologizes to Mine, looking genuinely guilty that they had to leave her out of the fun. Mine smiles warmly and assures him that it is perfectly alright. Mine holds up a snowball and asks if he wants to try making one himself. Otto points out the logical flaw that there are no rabbits around here to model it after. Ignoring his comment, Mine declares that she has found a way to kill time while they wait. She turns away, leaving Otto to wonder what she is referring to. Mine instructs Otto to simply squeeze the snow and shape it gently into a round form. She demonstrates the technique, humming as she molds the cold powder in her hands. The result is a success, creating an oddly adorable family of snow creatures lining the ground. Mine cheers for the cute assembly they have brought to life. However, the abstract shapes lead to confusion, with someone exclaiming it looks like a bug or even a gyoza. The artistic interpretation seems to vary wildly among the observers. Mine focuses intensely on her technique, gently squeezing and shaping the snow to make it perfectly round. She visualizes the process in her head to get the form just right. Her merchant mind activates as she considers that children would be interested in cute molds for shaping snow. She imagines creating the cutest molds in the world to sell. Otto contributes to the creative process, suggesting they decorate the shapes with small stones and dried leaves. Mine's eyes light up as she agrees with the idea. Pushing the concept further, Mine proposes making molds shaped like flowers or animals. Otto strokes his chin, looking intrigued by the potential product. He falls into deep thought, analyzing the commercial viability of snow molds. Mine watches him expectantly, holding her snow rabbit close. Mine gets excited, suggesting they pack snow into long rectangular molds to create blocks. She mimics the pressing motion, explaining how to compress the snow. Otto brings her back to reality, pointing out that no one would buy balls of snow because they melt. Mine looks shocked, having momentarily forgotten the laws of nature. Undeterred by logic, Mine presents a rectangular slab of snow and proudly declares it a book. She asks if it isn't the cutest thing he has ever seen. She fantasizes about making a pile of these snow books and stacking them up high. Her dream world is filled with frozen literature. The scene shifts abruptly to the guardroom where Mine lies sick in bed, with Otto apologizing for leaving her in the snow. He looks distraught over his failure to protect her. Despite her fever, Mine continues to babble about standing the snow blocks up and aligning them like a bookshelf. She smiles deliriously, trapped in her bookish obsession. Otto holds his head in shame, lamenting that with two adults present, This collapse shouldn't have happened. Lutz looks on with concern as Otto beats himself up. Mine happily murmurs about making bookshelf molds to build an entire library out of snow. She is completely lost in her fever dream, oblivious to the worry around her. Benno steps in to share the burden, stating that all three of them are to blame for getting carried away. He admits he was the one who accepted the challenge in the first place. The three males stand solemnly around the sick girl, acknowledging their collective failure. They silently agree that they must do better next time. Lutz breaks the tension, smiling and suggesting that from now on, they should all be more careful. The adults look chastised by the child's maturity. Benno crosses his arms, his ears perking up as he hears Mine mumbling in her sleep about a new product. She calls out his name in her delirium. Gunther arrives to pick up his daughter, hoisting her onto his back to carry her home. Lutz informs Mine that her dad is here to take her. Benno watches them leave, his mind already churning over the new product idea Mine mentioned in her sleep. He smiles, realizing she is working even while unconscious. As she is carried away, Mine notices that Benno made a giant snow rabbit before heading home. She marvels at the unexpected gesture from the merchant. In her feverish state, Mine mumbles that if they make the product, everyone will love it. She smiles contentedly, dreaming of market success. She laughs happily in her dream, hugging a giant snow gyoza that she finds adorable. Her fever dream transforms the snow rabbit into a delicious dumpling. The dream takes a weird turn as she imagines snow Benno molds, but Benno yells that no one would love that. The bubble pops, ending that specific nightmare. Waking up slightly on her father's back, Mine asks Lutz if they can make gyoza next. Lutz asks what that is, confused by the unfamiliar word. A serene breeze rustles through the foliage, setting a peaceful mood for the afternoon in the forest. Mine indulges in a moment of pure bliss, letting out a soft, contented sigh as she drifts into her own world. Startled by her odd behavior, Lutz asks why she is making strange noises, to which Mine replies she is undergoing imagination training. She rubs the surface of a clay tablet with loving devotion, fiercely declaring that she is reading a book despite the reality. Lutz drily points out that the object is merely clay, forcing Mine to admit she is indulging in yet another fantasy. Defending herself as a practitioner of escapism, Mine pleads to let her imagination carry her away from the harsh reality of their world for just a moment. Lutz smiles down at her with amusement, noting that she certainly loves books more than anything else. The two friends lie back on the grass, enjoying the quiet companionship under the open sky. Watching Lutz relax beside her, a sudden idea sparks within Mine's mind. She turns to him with a purposeful look, calling out his name to get his attention. With a sparkle in her eye, Mine proposes reading a story aloud for him. Lutz looks back in confusion, baffled by the offer to have something read to him when there is no book. Mine explains that reading aloud creates a special shared immersion, bringing the story to life for both the reader and the listener. Realizing he has no say in the matter, Lutz resigns himself to being dragged into her fantasy as she prepares to recite a fairy tale from her old world. Mine encourages him to spread the wings of his imagination, and Lutz agrees to listen for a little while. Clearing her throat with a serious expression, Mine prepares to begin her narration. She starts the tale of an old couple from long ago, describing how the man cut grass and the woman washed clothes. As the story goes, a large momo comes tumbling down the stream with a loud sound, surprising the old woman. Lutz interrupts immediately to ask what a momo is, breaking the flow of the story. Annoyed, Mine scolds him for interrupting and instructs him to fill in any unknown words using his own imagination. Left to his own devices, Lutz listens as Mine describes the old woman desiring the delicious object for her husband. Struggling to visualize the unknown term, Lutz assumes that if it looks delicious, it must be a massive piece of meat. His imagination conjures a gigantic pork thigh tumbling down the river alongside a muscular man he dubs Don Blanco, based on the sound effect. Mine narrates that the old woman picked up the object, causing Lutz to shudder at the mental image of her lifting the heavy meat. He stares in shock, wondering just how terrified he should be of an old woman strong enough to haul such a prize. Mine continues, describing the old man's delight as he prepares to cut into the incredible find. Suddenly, the object splits open and a child bursts out, a scene that Lutz visualizes as a horrific explosion of flesh and gore. Terrified by the nightmare fuel, Lutz grabs Mine and screams her name in panic. Pale and shaken, he stammers about the child that just emerged from the meat. He questions if the creature was even human, his grip tightening on Mine's shoulder. Lutz remains paralyzed by the terrifying image seared into his brain. He yells that such a story is too scary for kids, while Mine is bewildered that he found a simple fairy tale so horrifying. Lutz complains about her fantasies, but Mine cheerfully suggests they train their imaginations together next time with something easier. As they walk home, Mine ponders comparing a peach to a trombe, while Lutz is still haunted by the mysterious Don Blanco. Mine and Tully arrive at the door, with Tully barely containing her excitement about meeting their host, while Mine narrates her surprise that both of them were invited today. The door swings open to reveal a beaming Frida, who enthusiastically welcomes Mine and her angelic big sister with open arms. The sisters step inside, having received a special invitation to visit Frida's luxurious home. Frida declares with a confident smile that a rich day of entertainment awaits them, leaving Tully slightly bewildered by her intensity. Mine observes Frida stomping around with unusual energy, noting that the girl seems far more hyped up than normal. A mischievous chuckle escapes Frida's lips as she plots something devious for her guests. Frida excitedly tells Lies that today is a 1 in a million chance since Mine is actually healthy and accompanied by her sister. She schemes to exploit Tully's presence to pry information from the recently secretive Mine, hoping the sisterly bond will loosen Mine's lips. Pumping her fists in triumph, Frida solidifies her resolve to execute her master plan exactly right. With a dramatic flourish, Frida announces her true ambition is to extract a brand new recipe from Mine. Frida offers Tully a stunning dress gifted by her grandfather, explaining it's slightly too big for her but would fit Tully perfectly. Impressed by Tully's mature appearance, Frida excitedly suggests applying makeup, revealing she has been learning the skill recently. Tully blushes with uncertainty as the enthusiastic Frida prepares to give her a makeover. Mine watches in panic, realizing that if this continues, her recipe is nothing but a pipe dream. Undeterred by the chaos, Frida calls for Tully's attention to demonstrate a special talent she has cultivated. She attempts a trick learned from a street entertainer, but her confidence falters as she slips mid-performance. The performance ends in disaster as the balls rain down on her head with a comedic bonk. Clutching her head in defeat, Frida insists through her tears that she had mastered the trick perfectly before. Mine offers awkward comfort to the devastated girl, repeating that it is fine while Frida groans in humiliation. With impressive resilience, Frida instantly snaps back to determination, declaring this merely a minor setback before her comeback. Tully admires the drink's color, but Frida corrects her assumption, explaining it is actually a rare tea favored by nobles. The moment the bitter liquid hits their tongues, both sisters violently spit it out in perfect unison. As the sisters recover from the bitterness, Frida admits she made a similar mistake with her father's alcohol, while Tully notes the drink is definitely for adults. A look of crushed disappointment washes over Frida's face as her attempts to impress continue to fail. Tears well up in Frida's eyes as she laments the collapse of her carefully laid plans. Clenching her dress in frustration, she apologizes for dragging Tully into her selfish schemes only to fail completely. Tully remains confused by the underlying drama but speaks up to comfort the distraught girl. With a warm smile, Tully assures Frida that her desire for them to have fun was clear, regardless of the mishaps. Frida stares in awe, completely captivated by the genuine kindness radiating from Mine's sister. A soft, genuine smile graces Frida's lips as she reacts to Tully's warmth. She internally admits defeat, recognizing that she was unable to profit off Tully's smile. Frida boldly asks Tully how much it would cost to buy her as a big sister, prompting a furious Mine to intervene and claim Tully as her own exclusive angel. Mine and Tully arrive at the door, with Tully barely containing her excitement about meeting their host, while Mine narrates her surprise that both of them were invited today. The door swings open to reveal a beaming Frida, who enthusiastically welcomes Mine and her angelic big sister with open arms. The sisters step inside, having received a special invitation to visit Frida's luxurious home. Frida declares with a confident smile that a rich day of entertainment awaits them, leaving Tully slightly bewildered by her intensity. Mine observes Frida stomping around with unusual energy, noting that the girl seems far more hyped up than normal. A mischievous chuckle escapes Frida's lips as she plots something devious for her guests. Frida excitedly tells Lies that today is a 1 in a million chance since Mine is actually healthy and accompanied by her sister. She schemes to exploit Tully's presence to pry information from the recently secretive Mine, hoping the sisterly bond will loosen Mine's lips. Pumping her fists in triumph, Frida solidifies her resolve to execute her master plan exactly right. With a dramatic flourish, Frida announces her true ambition is to extract a brand new recipe from Mine. Frida offers Tully a stunning dress gifted by her grandfather, explaining it's slightly too big for her but would fit Tully perfectly. Impressed by Tully's mature appearance, Frida excitedly suggests applying makeup, revealing she has been learning the skill recently. Tully blushes with uncertainty as the enthusiastic Frida prepares to give her a makeover. Mine watches in panic, realizing that if this continues, her recipe is nothing but a pipe dream. Undeterred by the chaos, Frida calls for Tully's attention to demonstrate a special talent she has cultivated. She attempts a trick learned from a street entertainer, but her confidence falters as she slips mid-performance. The performance ends in disaster as the balls rain down on her head with a comedic bonk. Clutching her head in defeat, Frida insists through her tears that she had mastered the trick perfectly before. Mine offers awkward comfort to the devastated girl, repeating that it is fine while Frida groans in humiliation. With impressive resilience, Frida instantly snaps back to determination, declaring this merely a minor setback before her comeback. Tully admires the drink's color, but Frida corrects her assumption, explaining it is actually a rare tea favored by nobles. The moment the bitter liquid hits their tongues, both sisters violently spit it out in perfect unison. As the sisters recover from the bitterness, Frida admits she made a similar mistake with her father's alcohol, while Tully notes the drink is definitely for adults. A look of crushed disappointment washes over Frida's face as her attempts to impress continue to fail. Tears well up in Frida's eyes as she laments the collapse of her carefully laid plans. Clenching her dress in frustration, she apologizes for dragging Tully into her selfish schemes only to fail completely. Tully remains confused by the underlying drama but speaks up to comfort the distraught girl. With a warm smile, Tully assures Frida that her desire for them to have fun was clear, regardless of the mishaps. Frida stares in awe, completely captivated by the genuine kindness radiating from Mine's sister. A soft, genuine smile graces Frida's lips as she reacts to Tully's warmth. She internally admits defeat, recognizing that she was unable to profit off Tully's smile. Frida boldly asks Tully how much it would cost to buy her as a big sister, prompting a furious Mine to intervene and claim Tully as her own exclusive angel. Benno marches through the street carrying Mine while Lutz follows, the merchant looking stern and determined. Benno complains that walking at Mine's snail pace would take until sunset, brushing off her insistence that she is fine to walk. Listing off his busy schedule from the lumber yard to the guild, Benno accelerates until Lutz warns him to slow down. Desperate to halt the bumpy ride, Mine grabs a handful of Benno's hair and yanks it to get his attention. Mine slumps in defeat, looking visibly drained by the physical exertion of the journey. Benno immediately starts nagging her, claiming that all his hard work is merely an investment in her value. Mine hesitantly interrupts his lecture, looking up at him with a serious expression. Benno asks if she ignored him, but Mine counters by asking if he is properly looking after his hair. Benno screams asking if she enjoys making him suffer, but Mine yells back that they must fight his genetic baldness with a better lifestyle. The merchant stands frozen in shock, horrified by the implication that his hair is a source of pain. Lutz advises a stunned Benno to just let Mine ramble, noting that her strange knowledge cannot be stopped at this stage. Mine begins to vibrate with intensity as she summons the knowledge from her past life as Urano. The narrative shifts focus as Mine digs deep into her memory banks to find a solution. She realizes with panic that she has no idea how to create a chemical hair growth agent. Mine pivots to suggesting dietary changes like zinc and protein, while Benno resigns himself to the lifestyle adjustments. She raises a finger and announces that she is about to reveal the most critical part of the cure. Pointing directly at him, Mine blames Benno for her workload and forbids him from overworking himself ever again. Benno instantly rejects that condition, causing Mine to rage that he refuses to make things easier for her. Mine ponders using seaweed as a remedy but realizes the lack of a nearby sea makes it impossible to obtain. She wonders if fantasy plants exist in this world that could substitute for seaweed's properties. In her imagination, she visualizes pouring water over Benno's head to stimulate growth. The mental image turns strange as branches begin to wiggle and sprout from his scalp. Mine excitedly suggests a transplant, but Benno snaps back asking if she is imagining him as a mana-absorbing monster. A voice suddenly cuts in, announcing that the conversation has been overheard. Karina slams her hands on the table, demanding to be told all the details immediately. Mine and Lutz stare in shock at the sudden, intense appearance of Benno's sister. Benno growls asking if she is worried about his hair too, but Karina snaps that this is not about him at all. Blushing with affection, Karina declares that her interest is entirely for the sake of Otto. She quickly adds that she wouldn't love Otto any less if he lost his hair, trying to clear up any doubt. Karina insists that as the face of the company Otto must look good, leaving Benno to grumble that she just cares about the business. Benno scolds Mine for looking at him with pity, while Otto beams at the idea that losing hair wouldn't diminish his charm because he is cool like his father. Karina cheerfully points out that she and Benno have similar hair, so he really shouldn't worry about his brother's hair so much. Benno shouts for everyone to leave, but Karina ignores the outburst and playfully suggests they could make a wig for him out of her own hair. Lutz walks with Mine after the meeting and asks if she has finally calmed down yet. Realizing she is still upset, Lutz listens as Mine wonders aloud why Benno got so angry when she was just seriously worried about him. Mine admits she feels guilty that Benno works so hard and overworks himself for her sake sometimes. She explains that even though she tells him she can walk, he always insists on carrying her anyway. A flashback reveals that being carried on his shoulders forces her to stare at his hair, making it impossible for her not to be concerned. Karina welcomes Otto home, noting that he must be so tired from his day. Implementing the advice she heard, Karina gives Otto a special, stress-relieving scalp massage which he enjoys immensely. Mine frantically designs a scalp massaging brush as a substitute for hair growth agent, while Lutz accepts that his job is both building her inventions and calming her down. Frida reflects on her demanding days at the guild, noting that she must learn many things to prepare for her future. Her maid politely offers some herbal tea, but Frida ignores the beverage in favor of her own plans. She flops onto the sofa with a heavy sigh, admitting that while the work is fun, it leaves her utterly exhausted. Determination fills her eyes as she declares that she must relieve her stress immediately before doing anything else. Initiating Lady Frida's golden therapy, she pours out coins and revels in the sound of their clinking. A flush of ecstasy colors her cheeks as she marvels at how truly fascinating money is. The maid offers a massage, but Frida vehemently rejects the physical comfort in favor of the cold, hard cash. She obsesses over the sensory details, worshipping the weight, the sound, and the shiny luster of the gold. When the maid suggests she go to bed if she's tired, Frida dismisses the logic and insists on staying with her treasure. Hugging the money tight to her chest, she admits that just thinking about wealth makes her feel warm inside. She snuggles deeply into the bag of coins, completely lost in her affection for material wealth. Frida wonders aloud if this intense feeling is love, while her maid flatly denies the possibility with a concerned look. Suddenly, the maid is struck by a brilliant inspiration to channel Frida's energy into something productive. Frida happily pours her coins into a bunny-shaped bag, treating the task like a playful ritual. Liz begins her culinary research, stirring ingredients with absolute devotion to create a new dessert. Frida struggles to drag a heavy sack across the floor, determined to help despite the physical strain. Liz watches expectantly as Frida takes a bite of the experimental treat to judge its quality. Frida throws herself onto her bed in frustration, tossing a pillow aside as she laments the failure. Liz notes that the pound cake was firmer and drier this time, taking mental notes for the next attempt. Lying in bed with a hard pillow, Frida feels the weight of the failed experiment pressing down on her. While eating patatoffels, she realizes the buttery smell reminds her of a specific dessert called two-root de Pyrenees. Liz experiments further, finding that adding up Felsage skin has improved the flavor significantly. Liz calls out to Frida, who peeks around the corner to see the latest creation. Frida's eyes light up with excitement as she recognizes the cake Liz has prepared. She marvels at the layers, explaining that her mistake of forgetting butter led to folding the dough repeatedly. Liz demands a taste test before they consider sales, watching Frida analyze the texture. Frida notes the crunch and difficulty in cutting, musing that this accidental creation could be a brand new dessert. Elsewhere, Lutz snatches the patatoffels and notices the distinct scent of weekend cake wafting through the air. Frida is suddenly struck by a craving for millefeuille, sensing a mysterious connection to a development happening far away. Gazing out the window, Frida whispers Mine's name and wonders what her friend is doing right now. Frida sits before a pile of coins, counting them with a gleam in her eye as she indulges in her favorite pastime. She plans to use her wealth to surprise Mine, wanting to invent something completely new and profitable. The room fills with the sound of jingling metal as she happily counts 36 coins. Her imagination runs wild as she pictures a gaudy hair ornament made entirely of money. A sudden knock at the door interrupts her counting at 42 coins, startling her. Panic ensues as she scrambles to hide her stash and weapon, fumbling to catch a falling Judy. The maid enters to announce dinner, and Frida coolly pretends nothing happened while mentally noting the final count. Frida reflects on her future, realizing she needs knowledge and connections to survive alone among nobles. She meticulously plans a store for nobles, insisting to her staff that every tiniest detail must be perfect. At the guild, she registers a product that looks profitable, seeing it as the perfect opportunity for business. Frida envisions her future store filled with luxurious, dazzling lighting to impress the customers. She bluffs to the clerk that the guildmaster has already praised her idea, securing immediate approval. Her fantasy escalates to include statues decorated with gold to maximize the display of wealth. Frida and the guildmaster clash, trading insults about being sly and discerning while headbutting each other. They continue to argue intensely about the interior decor, specifically the gold walls and red silk. A sharp, dangerous expression crosses Frida's face as she grips a dagger with intent. Frida visits her grandfather in his office, where he is busy weighing gold and silver parts. She presents the knife he gave her for protection, admitting she has no idea how to use it properly. He reveals he disguises himself to check his trade routes and catch those who start cutting corners. He instructs her to practice with the tool continuously until using it becomes second nature. He asks if she will punish the cheaters, reinforcing that they are profit-minded people who must protect their interests. Frida skillfully peels vegetables with a knife, receiving praise from her maid for her handling of the blade. Her grandfather advises her to keep dirt on people to use as blackmail, significantly increasing her craftiness. Exhausted from the day's lessons, Frida collapses onto her bed while her maid prepares tea. The maid admires Frida's elegance and purity, finding her blood relationship to the guild master unbelievable. The maid reflects on Frida's maturity in understanding that she simply cannot get along with everyone. She praises Frida for being a diligent and attentive listener who makes people feel heard. Frida smiles sweetly, internally admitting she usually tolerates people by imagining them as walking sacks of gold. She dumps a box of documents onto the table, telling the maid she needs to sort through them immediately. Frida rages about a specific person who was like an empty sack, frustrated by his lack of monetary value. The documents are revealed to be blackmail material on guild members, keeping Frida's true nature hidden from the world. The question of who is the best carrier echoes through the city streets as the answer, mine, rings out. A chorus of voices rises in unison, shouting, everyone, in a joyous declaration. Mine thanks the group for their help with the temple talks, relieved that everything went well. The conversation shifts to Mine's habit of being carried, noting how it has become a regular occurrence for her. While Mine's mind is singularly focused on her blue robes and the temple library, the others have a different agenda. A sudden realization strikes Mine that she still has a chance to achieve her goals. Karina eagerly approaches Mine, asking if she can finally hold the girl as much as she wants. Karina delights in how light and tiny Mine feels in her arms, while Mine laughs nervously at the attention. Explaining her motivation, Karina admits she wanted a turn since everyone else is always carrying Mine. Lutz and Tully watch the scene with mixed emotions, observing Karina holding Mine with a beam of light. Lutz twitches with suppressed emotion, muttering about how wonderful the sight is. Otto is moved to tears, proclaiming Karina looks like a goddess or the Holy Mother herself. Gunther snaps at Otto for fantasizing about them being a family, shouting not to claim other people's daughters. With fierce possessiveness, Gunther declares that Mine is his daughter while Lutz watches on. Karina catches Lutz off guard by suggesting he should try holding Mine as well. She points out that his desire to hold Mine was written all over his face, flustering him completely. Lutz awkwardly takes Mine into his arms, stumbling slightly as he tries to find his balance. Mine notes Lutz's red face, which he denies, while internally he marvels at the odd sensation of holding her. Lutz asks Mine who she likes being carried by the most, admitting he used to feel awkward getting close to her. Mine considers the question carefully, noting that she usually has a fever regardless of who holds her. Benno looms over her, but Mine cheerfully critiques him, stating he is always a bit too rough. Annoyed, Benno complains that he came expecting lucrative talk, not a critique of his carrying skills. He argues that she gets shaken around because she is too light and orders her to gain some weight. Mine retorts that before he knows it, she will grow so big he won't be able to carry her at all. Benno flashes a confident, challenging smile, telling her she had better do exactly that. Otto and Gunther jump in, vying for the top spot by asking if she prefers Karina or her father. Mine reflects that while she used to live solely for books, being with everyone has made her realize something new. Looking at her family and friends, she admits she has never thought about whose carrying style she prefers. She pauses, her hands reaching out as she considers the unique qualities of each person. Mine describes the different feelings, from soothing and sinking sensations to energetic and gentle embraces. She acknowledges the one that gives her a nice view, realizing each person offers something unique. A warm smile spreads across her face as she concludes that this variety is what makes her happy. Realizing she doesn't have to look up at everyone anymore, Mine feels a sense of belonging with the group. Mark arrives at the scene, confused by the gathering and wondering what is going on. Mine lights up at the sight of him and calls out to Mr. Mark as he asks if he can join the fun. Benno bonks Mine on the head as she cheekily declares that Mark is actually the one she likes to be carried by the most. Mine praises Tully's impressive speed with the needle as her sister finishes a task in record time. Leaning in with a teasing grin, Mine asks if Tully's sudden dedication is due to a secret crush. Tully vehemently denies the accusation, her face flushing red as she tries to shut down Mine's playful interrogation. Narrating her inner thoughts, Tully admits that seeing a certain someone work so hard does inspire her to push herself further. Entering the bedroom, Tully decides to keep that motivation a secret as she finds Mine collapsed in bed with a fever. Mine groans that her fever returned because she got too excited visiting the book room for the first time in days. Tully worries about Mine's health, mentioning that Lutz told her how busy things are at Benno's store. She advises Mine to sleep early but makes the mistake of asking what her schedule looks like for tomorrow. Mine rattles off an exhausting list of duties involving the high priest, ordering tools, and planning menus. Horrified by the workload, Tully covers her ears and frantically tells Mine to forget she asked and just sleep. Standing in the hallway, Tully thinks that merely hearing about such a schedule is enough to give her a fever too. Her gaze sharpens as she notices something amiss with the pile of Mine's belongings. Tully pauses, her expression softening into concern as she inspects the item in her hands. She discovers a tear in the fabric of the blue robes Mine wears at the temple. A memory of Mine obsessing over books flashes through Tully's mind. She recalls Mine's insatiable desire for reading material, which often leads to trouble. The scene shifts to the quiet exterior of the house as night settles in. Tully confirms that the damaged garment is indeed Mine's ceremonial blue robe. A wave of fury washes over her as she assumes the temple staff are bullying Mine because she is a commoner. Just as her anger peaks, Gunther interrupts her spiraling thoughts with a gentle tap on the shoulder. Gunther points out the specific nature of the tear, silently communicating that it might not be what she thinks. Calming down, Tully takes up her needle and begins to expertly mend the torn sleeve. Under the warm light of a candle, Tully sews with focus while Gunther watches over her with a drink in hand. She carefully places the mended robes back into the basket, the task complete. Tully smiles with satisfaction, happy to have secretly supported her hard-working little sister. The next morning, Mine wakes up feeling refreshed and realizes her fever has finally gone down. Panic instantly sets in as she remembers that she tore her sleeve yesterday by getting it caught in book chains. Terrified of admitting such a silly mistake, Mine scrambles to find the robe and fix it before anyone notices. Tully's voice cuts through the panic, revealing that she has already stitched the tear back together. With a playful wink, Tully signals that she has Mine's back, no questions asked. Mine stares at the neatly folded clothes, overwhelmed by her sister's silent act of kindness. Tears well up in Mine's eyes as the weight of Tully's love hits her full force. Unable to contain her gratitude, Mine launches herself at her sister, tackling Tully in a massive hug. As the family watches the heartwarming scene, Mine loudly declares her love for her big sister. Mom calls them for breakfast, asking how the tear happened, leaving Mine to awkwardly dodge the question. A quiet, wooden building stands under the open sky, housing the resting patient inside. Lutz sits by the bedside, diligently supervising Mine as she sleeps to recover her health. Mine wakes up claiming she is surprisingly tough, but Lutz skeptically asks how she lasted half a day without lunch. He scolds her for collapsing, insisting that this is no time for jokes given her frail condition. Admitting defeat, Mine confesses that she is hungry and wants to eat something. Her eyes light up as she imagines a meal that would give her an instant power boost. Mine drools on her pillow, fantasizing about sinking her teeth into some fresh meat. Lutz looks at her with confusion, questioning her specific emphasis on the word fresh. Mine laughs nervously and claims she was joking about killing a bird, though her hunger is real. Lutz falls silent, placing a hand on his chin as he contemplates her request deeply. He quietly slips out of the room, leaving Mine alone with her thoughts. Mark greets Lutz outside the room and asks for an update on Mine's condition. He notes that things always seem to go foul for Mine when she is left unsupervised. A voice calls out, "Master, I'm back," interrupting the conversation with news from the outside. Mark enters holding a package, announcing he has brought something special from the slaughterhouse. Hands carefully peel back the paper wrapping to reveal the raw contents inside. Lutz gasps in shock, shouting the name of the meat as he realizes what they have acquired. Bursting back into the room, Lutz slams the door open and startles Mine with his sudden entrance. He presents the fresh, unsalted meat to her, asking excitedly what they should do with it. Mine stares in wonder as Lutz explains that they have secured actual pig meat. She mentally lists delicious dishes like ginger pork but realizes she lacks key ingredients like rice and soy sauce. Recovering quickly, Mine instructs Lutz to sprinkle it with salt and stir-fry it until the fat comes out. She continues the recipe, telling him to simmer it with veggies and add milk to make it creamy. Lutz rushes out of the room to start cooking, while Mine shouts a reminder not to discard the veggie stock. The ingredients, fresh meat, root vegetables, and a bowl of milk, are laid out ready for preparation. Mark watches Lutz prepare the food and asks what exactly the boy intends to make. He warns Lutz that raw meat is extremely valuable and he will be made to pay for it if he fails. Benno shoves a nervous Lutz toward the kitchen, questioning if the boy even has enough experience to pull this off. Lutz stands before the ingredients, swallowing his fear and focusing on the task ahead. The meat hits the pan with a sizzle as Lutz begins to fry it exactly as Mine instructed. Mine screams for Lutz to freeze, frantically warning him not to discard the precious vegetable stock. Mine lies back on her pillow, her eyes fixed on the cooking process with intense anticipation. Lutz stares intently at the pot, focusing all his attention on the simmering mixture. The room fills with the sound of cooking as Lutz stands over the stove, carefully tending to the stew. Lutz watches with bated breath, his eyes widening as the dish finally comes together. With a triumphant shout of "Tada!" Lutz unveils the finished dish, beaming with pride at his creation. Mine takes a bite, savoring the flavor as the warm, delicious taste fills her mouth. Her eyes sparkle with pure delight as the rich flavors of the meat and creamy sauce hit her tongue. Cheering with joy, Mine declares the meal a total success and calls Lutz a culinary genius. She explains that the veggie stock balanced the saltiness and names the dish pork stew. Lutz stares at her suspiciously, asking how she knows words like stew and pork, and where she learned so much. Pushing the questions aside, Lutz celebrates his victory and eagerly asks if he can have seconds for himself. He dashes out of the room in a blur of energy, desperate to refill his bowl from the pot. Lutz skids to a halt as he runs straight into Master Benno, who looms imposingly in the kitchen. Benno nonchalantly admits he helped himself to a taste because the aroma was simply too tempting to resist. Lutz stammers in shock, realizing that Mine's chance for a second helping might be in jeopardy. A devastating realization hits Lutz as he stares into the completely empty pot. Furious, Lutz screams at Benno for devouring the entire stew without leaving a drop. Mine walks in to defuse the situation, announcing that the food gave her enough energy to finally get out of bed. She thanks Lutz for the meal and promises to cook it for him again someday to make up for the loss. While smiling on the outside, Mine internally vows sweet revenge on Benno, marking the start of strict health supervision. An ominous question breaks the peace of a quiet day, asking who holds the title of being closest to Mine. Lutz boldly steps forward to claim the title for himself with a dramatic declaration. Frida immediately challenges him, questioning if he really intends to say that to her, Mine's best friend. Caught in the middle of the conflict, a dizzy Mine wonders how this chaotic situation even began. A flashback reveals Mine happily suggesting a trip to the Central Plaza to enjoy the nice weather. Frida spots her friend in the crowd and exclaims what a stroke of luck it is to run into her. Insisting it must be fate, Frida pushily invites Mine to come over to her house immediately. Lutz shoves his way into the conversation, demanding Frida hold on a minute before taking Mine away. He firmly asserts that Mine is with him today and apologizes to Frida while dragging her away. Frida refuses to back down, arguing that as the best friend, she deserves to spend time with Mine. Mine sighs in exhaustion as the two friends bicker back and forth over who holds the title of best friend. Lutz clenches his fist and argues that he lives close enough to always come to her rescue. He plays his trump card, boasting that he even knows the specific sound she makes when she is happy. Frida is left in shock, asking in disbelief if mine actually makes such a sound. Lutz stands triumphant, claiming this knowledge proves he clearly knows mine better than she does. Frida hesitates, admitting Lutz might take care of her more, but prepares to launch her own counterattack. She reveals that she and mine have made desserts together and even washed each other's hair in the bath. Lutz recoils in defeat at this intimacy while mine yells at Frida for bringing up something so embarrassing. The bickering continues unabated, but mine starts to find the situation rather funny. She reflects on her past life as Urano, realizing she never imagined two cute kids would fight over her. Giggling to herself, she admits that while fighting is bad, being the center of attention is quite flattering. Her stomach suddenly growls loudly, reminding her that she has not eaten lunch yet. Mine begins to daydream about eating French toast with honey on such a beautiful sunny day. A beat of silence passes as her expression shifts into one of pure culinary inspiration. Lutz notices the change immediately and calls out to her, snapping her out of her food trance. He identifies that specific look as the face she makes when devising a new sweet recipe. Lies suddenly appears, declaring nothing escapes a cook's eye, which terrifies mine. The cook eagerly demands to know the recipe, promising to make anything mine wants. Mine panics, realizing Benno will yell at her if she gets distracted, and internally scolds Lies. Lutz interrupts to stop the fighting, announcing that mine is about to teach them a new recipe. The group freezes in stunned silence at the mention of a new creation from mine. Mine tries to flee, shouting that she can't tell them yet, only to crash into a dark figure. Benno catches her, grimly noting that he has finally found her. He painfully rubs his knuckles on her head, scolding her for forgetting their arranged meeting. Mark apologizes for his master's roughness, explaining that Benno was on edge after searching for so long. As Benno warns mine never to do this again, the others realize he is the one who truly has them all beat. A collection of peaceful fragments begins with mine and Lutz smiling brightly against a backdrop of stars. With her family out, mine takes command of the kitchen, stewing veggies and mushrooms while recalling a dangerous warning about their dance. The pot erupts into chaos as the aggressive mushrooms splash out, proving the warning was no joke. Gunther snatches the mushrooms away as mine tries to defend the raw flavor, reminding her they must be burned first. He reveals he suffered a burnt mouth for days because of them, just as the fungi launch a fresh assault on mine. Switching tactics, mine presents a paper crane to Lutz as a potential advertisement for their paper business. Lutz insists on adding arms and legs for coolness, but mine immediately vetoes the modification. She demands to know why he added human legs, so Lutz reveals a diagram of the terrifying result. Lutz argues that arms allow for weapons, but mine counters that a three-headed elemental dragon would be far superior. He claims the arms cancel out the creepiness, but mine retorts that he has only succeeded in doubling the horror factor. Mine laments that the arms opened a door to madness, and Lutz confirms he has no intention of stopping there. Heads sprout from the creation as Lutz ignores mine's pleas, forcing her to abandon the argument entirely. She realizes with amusement that boys are obsessed with heroes and robots regardless of which world they live in. Benno crushes mine's head in his grip, punishing her for the constant trouble she causes. He turns his attention to Lutz, demanding a demonstration of how he would politely guide a female customer. Lutz freezes in panic, so mine steps in with a plan to help him master the interaction. She coaches him to say, "Come here," but Lutz stammers nervously under the pressure. Benno roars in frustration, warning Lutz that mine is destined to cause chaos today. Lutz snaps to attention and aggressively shouts, "Come this way, sir," with a fierce expression. A smiling Benno crushes both their heads, declaring that Lutz's failure to stop her earns them both a punishment. Mine shakes with suppressed laughter as she points out that Lutz mixed up "sir" and "mimagin." Lutz asks if she will grow taller, and mine happily confirms she has grown a little since last year. The conversation takes a turn as mine imagines being in a box, triggering a sudden devouring fever. Lutz worries that if she gets too big, he won't be able to carry her when she inevitably collapses. Mine ignores his concern to theorize that the devouring must be a solid, cramping force rather than steam. Lutz asks how she expects to be carried, prompting a mischievous idea from mine. A vision of a man cramped painfully into a box illustrates the sensation of the devouring. Mine demonstrates an Argentine backbreaker on Lutz, asking if this method would work for carrying her. Lutz yells in shock, but the sudden burst of physical activity miraculously cures mine's fever. With her health restored, Mine politely bows and greets a neighbor with a bright good morning. Mine asks a provocative question about whether Benno's affection for Karina matches Otto's. Causing Benno to recoil, he immediately tries to shut down the topic to avoid the comparison. Benno accidentally bows while greeting, a foreign custom that makes him panic as he realizes his mistake. He frantically tries to cover up the slip-up before Mine notices the cultural inconsistency. Mine presses him on what he is doing, but Benno explodes with a declaration that his love is greater than anyone's. He tries to deflect the awkwardness with sheer volume and intensity. He claims he was just tying his shoes, but Mine immediately points out that his shoes do not have laces. The excuse falls flat, leaving an awkward silence between them. Benno shifts gears to a tone of feigned maturity, commending Otto's effort to marry Karina. He grudgingly admits it is his loss, trying to maintain his dignity. Benno and Mark strike bizarre flexing poses while greeting Mine, claiming their shoulders are stiff. Mine stares at them in disbelief, questioning if they should be doing that at their age. Breaking character, Benno despairs that he cannot win against Mine and begs her to do something. He yells an apology to Karina, feeling his performance of love was a disappointment. Mine's thoughts drift to the existence of yarn in this world and the practical but ugly knitwear available. She notes that current designs show absolutely no care for aesthetics. She hatches a scheme to ask Benno for something that only makes sense in her old world to trick him. She knows he will agree if it yields a product, but will be furious if she is just messing around. The plan involves giving everyone hats with animal ears because the children would look adorable. She weighs the risk of Benno getting mad against the potential cuteness. Benno is forced into a humiliating Momo-kyun pose, his hands trembling with suppressed rage. Mine struggles to contain her laughter as she watches the grown man perform the cutesy gesture. The result is Benno wearing a bunny-eared hat and Mark donning a crocheted bear hat, posing with forced smiles. Benno snaps, squeezing Mine's head as she apologizes profusely for the prank. He correctly deduces that this stunt had absolutely nothing to do with any actual product. Mine tries to lie that she just brought in new products, but Benno demands to know why they had to wear them. His grip tightens as he sees through her flimsy excuse. She admits she doesn't know why, but insists the pose was pretty cute. Benno wonders if this absurdity is something that transcends universes. Mine defends herself by saying everyone grins when happy, but Benno counters with a specific example. He accuses her of grinning like she is about to rub her face on books. Changing the subject to fashion, Mine styles Tully's hair and gushes over how adorable she looks. Tully blushes at the attention and the new look. Gunther remarks that Tully is similar to Mine, comparing the behavior to how Frida acts with money. He mimes rubbing his face on coins to illustrate the point. Mine explains that letting the hair hang to one side makes Tully look more mature. She adds that an updo would also look nice when she gets a bit older. Lutz comments that he can't imagine Benno grinning, but Mine is certain he does it with his sister. They share a thoughtful look, imagining the stern merchant acting soft. Back at home, Gunther enters the bedroom while the kids are trying to sleep. He looks at Mine with intense adoration, saying everything looks good on her. Gunther's face is covered by a mosaic censorship bar because his expression is too intense. Mine panics and yells at the camera not to put that caption over the image. Gunther laments that he doesn't know how to handle it if Mine becomes even more adorable. He is torn between not wanting her to marry anyone and wanting to show her off to the world. Mine narrates that her parents ended up having a small argument following this interaction. A blushing Gunther asks if he was really cool at the temple, admitting he was in a daze the whole time. Effa confirms his coolness with a gentle smile. Effa reminisces about his proposal, where he made many promises and gave embarrassed compliments. She casually remarks to Mine that Gunther is always so childish. Gunther is shocked, asking if she didn't think anything of his performance. He looks to Mine for support, sure that Mom must agree with him. He shouts that he is not embarrassed about the compliments and doesn't think he said enough of them. He firmly declares his intention to go through with all those promises. Effa snaps back, yelling that of course she thought he was cool and it made her fall in love all over again. She is frustrated that he couldn't tell that without words after being together so long. Realizing what she just shouted, Effa covers her mouth and turns bright red. Mine thanks them for the sugar overdose and asks if she can finally go to sleep. Gunther collapses from extreme joy at his wife's confession. Mine narrates the chaotic scene of her fainting father and beet-red mother. Lutz sits alone in the grass, sighing deeply as the title introduces the episode about Peru burgers. He reflects with a somber expression that things at home never seem to change. Mine suddenly appears behind him, asking if he is hungry when she notices his mood. Lutz jumps in fright, exclaiming that she scared him with her sudden arrival. He tries to clarify that hunger isn't the issue, though he admits he is actually hungry. Mine eagerly recruits him to help make a new dish she just invented since Perus are almost out of season. The promise of something super tasty instantly grabs Lutz's attention and makes him drool. Lutz chops ingredients furiously, realizing too late that Mine just wanted them to do all the hard work. Mine ignores his complaints and directs him to bring the ingredients over to the pot. She instructs him to add the items to the pot and cut the pickled pomes to a specific size. Lutz grumbles in annoyance as he stirs the boiling mixture in the pot. He calls out to Mine to ask if the consistency of the mixture is correct. Mine approves, noting that it looks good and should hold its shape well. She lists the ingredients they need to combine, including mince, Peru pulp, eggs, and fried veggies. The instructions continue as she tells them to mix everything together with clean hands. Mine checks on the group's progress, and they respond with enthusiasm to get the cooking started. A mistake is discovered when the pomes turn mushy, and someone realizes they should have discarded the broth. Mine pivots quickly, declaring that the sauce is perfect despite the texture mishap. She moves to the next step, instructing everyone to shape the mixture into ovals for the patties. Mine demonstrates how to press the shape and toss it back and forth to beat the air out. The sound of slapping meat fills the air as the patties are formed with care. She advises letting the patty sit for a moment and adding a small indent in the center. The patty hits the pan with a loud sizzle as the frying process begins. The kids watch in awe, exclaiming that the cooking food looks absolutely amazing. Mine halts their excitement to announce one more step, stopping a kid who wants to try it immediately. She reveals the final touch is to place cheese on top and let it melt. The dish is completed by pouring the pome sauce over the cheesy patty. The meal glistens on the plate as Mine triumphantly announces that it is finally done. Everyone takes a bite and cries out in joy at how good it tastes. Lutz is overcome with emotion, calling it the best meat he has ever had and comparing it to a dream. Mine smiles knowingly and asks if he is feeling better now that his stomach is full. Lutz insists that hunger wasn't the real reason he was upset earlier. He smiles at her and admits that, despite everything, he is indeed feeling better now. Gunther sits at the family dinner table, a thick cloud of visible melancholy hanging over him as the meal begins. Mine pauses mid-bite as the sound of loud sniffing catches her attention, prompting her to glance up in concern. Tears stream down Gunther's face as he weeps openly, while Mine asks if he isn't perhaps overreacting just a little bit. Effa tries to soothe him, insisting that being an apprentice shrine maiden won't kill Mine on her very first day. Gunther slams the table and wails incoherently, his words lost in a flood of unintelligible sobbing and worry. Mine looks on in confusion until Effa explains that they are all just as worried about the upcoming change as he is. Gunther falls silent, wiping his tear-streaked face as he tries to compose himself in front of his family. A heavy silence lingers for a moment as Gunther processes his emotions and the reality of the situation settles in. He finally speaks, reassuring himself that Mine will be fine and will return in the evening as if nothing happened. Mine is shocked to realize her father thought she was moving out permanently and quickly corrects the misunderstanding. She reassures him further by adding that Lutz will be there to look after her and she will come home every day. A mechanical whirring sound starts in Gunther's head as he fixates on the name, Lutz, with wide, shocked eyes. His imagination runs wild, conjuring a vision of Mine and Lutz getting married which gives him a strange sense of peace. He hallucinates Mine declaring she will marry Lutz because he is reliable, and Gunther finds himself nodding in agreement. The realization hits him like a truck, causing him to scream and demand that Mine rely on him instead of Lutz. He crushes Mine in a desperate bear hug, ignoring Tully's frantic warning that he is physically going to squash her. Gunther drops to his knees while holding her, sobbing that he just worries about her so much he can't help it. Effa interrupts the emotional scene, pragmatically reminding Mine that she needs to wake up early tomorrow. With a warm smile, Effa instructs Mine that it is time to end the night and go to bed immediately. Mine agrees without argument, signaling Tully that they should head to their room. Pausing at the door, Mine turns back with a bright smile to bid her parents a cheerful good night. Gunther and Effa stand together watching their daughters leave, wishing both of them a good night in return. The two sisters tuck themselves into their shared bed, the room falling silent as they settle in for the night. Tully breaks the silence with a whisper, asking softly if Mine is still awake. She admits that she feels the same fear as their father, knowing he feels lonely letting Mine venture into an unknown world. Tully confesses that while she trusts Mine to handle herself just fine, a lingering worry remains. Mine confidently reassures her sister that with her family and Lutz by her side, she has absolutely nothing to worry about. Internally, Mine acknowledges that while everyone else is consumed with worry for her well-being, she feels something entirely different. She squirms with pure delight, unable to sleep because she is too excited to start her new life filled with books. Misinterpreting the movement as fear, Tully holds her hand and promises to stay with her until morning, leaving Mine to awkwardly play along. Mine internally admits she isn't worried at all, noting that Tully is an angel for mistaking her excitement for fear. Snuggling into her pillow, Mine confidently declares that as long as books are within reach, she will be fine no matter what +1. A sudden clattering sound disrupts the silence, causing Mine to stir from her sleep and sit up. Gunther turns from the window with a sheepish smile, apologizing for waking her up as she calls out to him. He admits to his daughter that he just couldn't sleep, his expression soft and troubled in the dim light. Gunther explains that since he was restless, he decided to watch the moon, and Mine quietly approaches him. He reminisces that on the day of her birth, the moon was just as big and round as it is tonight. A flashback reveals a happy memory where Tully told him that baby Mine's eyes looked just like the moon. Returning to the present, he hugs Mine tightly and urges her to get healthier and eat well over there. Mine leans silently into her father's arm, accepting the protective embrace without saying a word. Suddenly, she lunges forward with a tackle that catches Gunther off guard, causing him to exclaim that he can't breathe. Beaming with a radiant smile, Mine shouts for him not to worry because she is strong and full of energy. Gunther looks at his daughter with a bittersweet expression, remarking that she grew up so quickly. The chapter ends with Mine silently thanking her dad, grateful for his love as she prepares for her new life. Benno recalls a sharp negotiation where he was asked how much he would pay to earn a little more, noting that Rinsham is already successful. He admits he was surprised by the girl's business sense, especially since she is only 6, and predicts she will be fearsome in the future. Benno confesses that he has honestly begun to look forward to the novel ideas she keeps coming up with. He decides it is not wise to flatter her too much and asks his silent listener if he has ever told her these things. He reveals that the person he is speaking to right now is the only one he shares these true thoughts with. Standing before a grave, Benno softly admits that if they had a child together, he would have hoped it would be like her. A close-up reveals the deep melancholy in his eyes as he stares silently at the headstone in a moment of vulnerability. He quickly dismisses his own words as nonsense and asks the deceased to simply ignore his rambling. Placing his hand on the grave, he promises to visit again, though he does not know when he will have the time. The scene concludes with a quiet view of the gravestone, inscribed with the name, Liz, resting peacefully among the leaves. A stern voice calls out Mine's name, cutting through the silence to demand her immediate attention. The high priest looms over her, asking with cold patience if she has finally calmed down enough to listen. A paper fan strikes her head to wake her up, the high priest scolding her for daring to sleep during his lecture. He commands her to play reversey with him if she has regained her composure, offering a challenge instead of comfort. Mine naively thinks he is a kind person for his earlier hug, completely misreading his competitive intent. She realizes too late that he is a sore loser seeking revenge, his eyes burning with the promise of her total defeat. The high priest dominates the board and declares absolute victory, looking down on her with a triumphant smirk. He hands her a book to return, and Mine's expression instantly shifts from defeat to pure, unadulterated joy. She eagerly asks to read it first, claiming the book smells delicious and will keep her well-fed for the day. Her bizarre choice of words leaves the high priest baffled, questioning how a book could possibly be considered food. He grants permission with a warning not to eat the paper, and Mine celebrates her prize with a happy wiggle. Mine clings to his robes as he walks, her turbulent emotions mirroring the stormy weather raging outside. She unleashes a torrent of needy requests for hugs and praise, causing the high priest to recoil from the sheer volume. He tries to shake her off so he can work, but eventually gives up and resigns himself to her clinginess. Mine asks if he plans to crush her spirit and brazenly suggests they switch roles so she can be the one in charge. She claims to be a Zashiki Warashi, a house spirit, leaving the high priest staring at her in utter confusion. Mine explains that she is a mysterious child yokai who causes phenomena beyond human understanding. She insists that he must praise her to receive good fortune, warning that her departure would bring ruin to his temple. He scoffs at her logic and orders her back to work, noting that she brings only trouble rather than luck. Mine obliterates the stack of work in record time and immediately demands more to keep her mind off her sadness. She begs for a lethal dose of work to drown her loneliness, forcing the high priest to snap that she shouldn't throw away her life. The exhausted high priest sees no issue with her request, his judgment clouded by 2 nights without sleep. Fran frantically intervenes to stop the madness, arguing that Mine needs a break if she is asking for work instead of books. The familiarity of the calculations triggers a breakdown, Mine sobbing as she remembers helping her father at the gate. Tears flow freely as she wails for her family, her heart aching with the overwhelming desire to go home. Her sadness twists into explosive rage as she blames the nobles, threatening a bloody carnival as her magic ramps up. The high priest stops her outburst with a face stone to the forehead, commanding her to control the dangerous surge of magic. He sighs at her lack of control and begins to rub her head, trying to soothe the emotional storm within her. He wraps his arms around her in a firm embrace, the rustle of his robes the only sound in the quiet room. He holds her silently, patting her back with awkward gentleness until her sobbing begins to subside. Mine looks up with a watery smile, her spirit restored by the unexpected comfort from her guardian. She cheekily comments that his hugging skills have improved, ruining the moment with her teasing observation. He pinches her cheek to shut her up, ignoring her garbled protests that she was only trying to give him a compliment. Benno groans in exhaustion, his head heavy with the weight of the endless paperwork before him. The scratching of his pen fills the silence as he laments that the work never seems to end. He complains of having no energy left for it all, even as Mark brings up the new products Mine keeps inventing. Benno acknowledges the massive opportunity the plant paper and other goods represent, despite the overwhelming workload. A silent moment passes as the gravity of the situation and the potential for expansion hangs in the air. Mark suddenly quotes a grandiose line about holding influence over the entire world, causing Benno to spit out his drink. Benno shouts in embarrassment, demanding to know why Mark remembers such a specific detail from the past. He grumbles defensively, looking away as he tries to dodge the memory of his own words. Finally admitting defeat, Benno confesses that he did indeed say those words long ago. He hastily adds a disclaimer that he didn't make such a bold claim without a valid reason. The memory shifts to a bright childhood scene where a young girl named Liz calls out to Benno. Liz confronts Benno, asking where he has been when they were supposed to be restocking. She wears a smug grin that immediately irritates Benno, who questions her expression. Liz reveals her father brought her along for a business meeting, sparking instant jealousy in Benno. A young Mark interrupts their bickering, sternly ordering them to get back to work immediately. Benno mutters bitterly that Liz sure has it nice compared to him. He stares wistfully, wishing he could be the one sitting in on a real business meeting. Liz suggests that if he renews his contract with the Gilberta company, that dream might become a possibility. She probes further, asking if he plans to work at his family's shop instead of renewing. Benno sighs deeply, revealing that his father won't let him work there since the shop goes to his brother. Liz recounts how she was told her value lay in being a sewing beauty and finding a wealthy husband. She explains that she was sent away to train as a seamstress against her own merchant ambitions. Benno smirks, summarizing that she threw a tantrum to pursue the merchant life she wanted. Liz flatly denies the accusation, insisting there was absolutely no tantrum involved. Benno points out the contradiction, noting that the Gilberta company ownership is passed down to seamstresses anyway. Liz argues she merely voiced her strong disagreement with the idea that she couldn't be a merchant, though Benno still calls it a tantrum. Her expression softens as she admits that she simply loves the act of selling things. She describes the joy of recommending items and seeing the happy smiles on customers' faces. A look of pure contentment crosses her face as she declares how fulfilling the work truly is. The flashback lingers on her radiant expression, capturing the moment of shared understanding between the two childhood friends. Liz seeks confirmation from Benno, asking if he agrees with her perspective on the matter. Benno winks and declares that once he is good enough, he will take the company to new heights since being a merchant is his calling. Liz heads to the workshop, explaining that Benno's sister Milda isn't interested in the business, leaving a gap until Karina grows up. She gestures to the Ehrenfest banner, vowing to improve until the entire region is desperate for her wares. Pointing a challenging finger at Benno, she loudly proclaims that she is going to leave him in the dust. Benno smirks at her declaration, teasingly questioning if conquering only Ehrenfest is enough for her. Liz takes the bait and aims higher, shouting that she will become a merchant who holds influence over the entire world. They lock eyes with fierce grins, challenging each other to bring it on in their race for success. Mark interrupts the shouting match by opening the door, complaining that he can hear them all the way from the storefront. Returning to the present, Benno sighs and confirms to Mark that this is exactly how the events unfolded. Mark notes the rivalry improved them both, though Benno admits he was just trying to one-up her goals. A silence falls over Benno as he drifts back into his memories, his expression turning contemplative. Liz explains in the past that she refuses to work at her family's shop merely to support her brother as a subordinate. She declares she wants a life in sales, even if it means marrying some random employee to make it happen. Winking playfully, she adds that she needs a husband before 20 to stop people from asking why she is single. Benno suggests she should just renew her contract here, but Liz dismisses him, claiming a guy wouldn't understand the pressure. He asks, "Here," to prompt her, shifting the conversation toward a solution right in front of her. Liz looks at him and admits she likes this place, but reiterates that she specifically needs a marriage partner. Benno bluntly tells her to just keep working here, the subtext of his offer hanging heavily in the air. Liz stares at him intensely, asking if he truly realizes the implication of what he is saying to her. Blushing and looking away, Benno awkwardly scratches his neck and mutters that maybe he does. Liz smiles with genuine warmth, acknowledging his clumsy proposal with a soft affirmative. She turns her back to him to hide her expression, quietly agreeing that she will do just that. Back in the present, a flustered Benno covers his face and tells a concerned Mark that he simply remembered a bit too much. Mine spots Frida sighing deeply and asks why she is making such a long face. Frida explains the difficulty of sewing a complex Bible prayer into an ornament for a refined lady. The mention of letters triggers a sudden epiphany in Mine regarding the nature of books. She excitedly recalls cloth books from her past and proposes making them until printing is invented. Mine beams with optimism, noting that Benno's company has an abundance of cloth and string. Her fantasy is cut short as a voice calls out to interrupt her train of thought. Frida poses the practical question of who exactly would read these hypothetical cloth books. She argues that nobles have parchment and Mine needs paper for the sheer volume of text she wants. Frida adds a splash of cold reality, stating that wasting skilled seamstresses on books makes no financial sense. A sudden wink reveals that Frida was merely teasing her friend with the harsh critique. She smiles warmly and declares she cannot wait to read a book made from Mine's real paper. Mine warns against expecting miracles but hopes to one day cure the devouring without noble contracts. Frida agrees that they must press forward for the sake of the future. Mine realizes that a book isn't truly a book without the distinct scent of ink and paper. A transition card marks the shift to the events surrounding the visit to the temple. Mine rushes everyone to the temple, causing Benno to panic because he wasn't ready to present the money. Benno finally emerges from his preparations, declaring that he is done at last. Mine looks right past him and asks where Benno is, completely failing to recognize him. Her jaw drops in a scream of pure shock as she realizes who she is looking at. She analyzes his glossy, honey-colored hair and wonders if he used animal fat to achieve the look. Mine stammers that this dramatic transformation makes him appear to be a whole new person. She grabs his coat and furiously demands he use that transformation magic to make her bigger. Benno clamps a hand over her mouth to silence her business idea for a product called the Handsamifier. Benno contemplates the mystery of the strange girl Otto introduced, fixating on the impossible perfection of her skin and hair despite her plain clothes. A headache begins to form as he recalls the agonizing memory of Otto endlessly rambling about his beloved Karina. The door crashes open to reveal a beaming Otto, who bursts into the room shouting Benno's name right on cue. Benno shoots a lethal glare at the intruder, causing Otto to instantly whine about being judged before he even speaks a word. Otto ignores the mountains of paperwork and demands Benno abandon his duties to come see something immediately. Dragging his protesting friend by the arm, Otto insists that Benno must witness this spectacle specifically in his capacity as a brother. Karina turns around with a dazzling sparkle, confusingly asking why Benno isn't at work while radiating an unnatural shine. Otto proudly declares that Mine is responsible for the transformation, leaving Benno stunned by the sheer radiance of his sister's hair. Otto admits he tried to gather an audience but failed, earning a sharp rebuke from Karina for bothering Benno with this nonsense. While Karina scolds her husband, Benno analyzes the unnatural silkiness of her hair and realizes the immense value of its secret. Benno snaps into business mode and barks a furious order for Otto to summon Mine and Lutz right this instant. Otto stammers that he needs an official invitation, so Benno stomps back to his office to furiously write one himself. The pen scratches rapidly across the paper as Benno calculates the high demand such a beauty product would command. He pauses with a frown, realizing that demanding her secrets outright would destroy his leverage as a merchant. A devious idea suddenly strikes him, twisting his expression into a look of calculated cunning. He hatches a plan to crush her with his authority, intending to use a fabricated insult to his honor as a pretext for the deal. Otto recoils in terror at Benno's demonic face as the merchant shoves the invitation at him and blames him for the chaos. Mine and Lutz stand nervously at the door until Mark announces their arrival to the intimidating master. Benno greets them with an intense stare, coolly stating that he hopes they don't mind the sudden summons. The children exchange pitying glances at the obviously stressed adult, offering a confused congratulation to break the tension. Tully attacks the kitchen grime with vigorous scrubbing, focused entirely on her household duties. A sharp knock snaps her to attention, and she hollers a welcome while rushing to the door. Frida waits on the other side, politely announcing her arrival to collect mine for the day. Panic sets in as Tully bows apologetically, forced to deliver bad news to their guest. She awkwardly explains that a complication has arisen regarding Mine's current status. Tully reveals the chaotic truth that Mine suddenly remembered a task and bolted to find Lutz. Frida takes the news in stride, agreeing to wait inside while Tully assures her of a quick return. The two girls sit in awkward silence as Frida's mind begins to race with overanalysis. A realization strikes Frida that she is completely alone with Tully for the very first time. She questions the strange pressure weighing on her chest as the quiet stretches on. To her shock, she identifies the foreign sensation pulsing through her as genuine nervousness. Frida admits to herself that outside of Mine, she has zero experience conversing with her peers. Tully shatters the tension with a blinding smile, cheerfully shouting Frida's name to break the ice. The sudden outburst sends Frida jumping out of her skin with a totally unrefined yelp. She freezes in embarrassment, cursing the weird noise that just escaped her noble lips. Desperate to recover, Frida stammers out an offer for Tully to join them in the carriage. Tully explodes with happiness, throwing her arms up and cheering for the rare treat. Her face glows with a flush of pure, unadulterated delight at the simple luxury. Frida stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend such intense excitement over a mode of transport. Laughter bubbles up from Frida as she finds Tully's innocent reaction simply too strange to resist. With a knowing smile, Frida tells the confused girl that she finally sees why Mine calls her an angel. Mark addresses Master Benno, who rests his chin on his hand in deep contemplation. Noting his master's heavy sigh, Mark observes that Benno seems to be worried about Mine. Benno instantly confronts him, shouting that he isn't worried but actually angry. He complains that the girl gives him a headache by constantly bringing in more work for him to do. Mark calmly notes that it seems Benno spoils her too much sometimes. Staring at the ceiling, Mark suggests that perhaps Benno could try being a little stricter. Benno stammers and looks away, unable to maintain his fiery front. He relents and admits it isn't that bad, while Mark clears his throat in the background. Benno snaps at Mark to wipe that knowing smile off his face immediately. Mark apologizes, though his stance remains relaxed and confident. He explains that he is simply happy to see Benno finally enjoying himself, shocking the merchant. Mark confirms his statement with a serene, eyes-closed smile. Benno attempts to argue that he is angry right now, not enjoying himself at all. He claims he is frankly grateful whenever she falls ill because it gives him a break. Mark points out that Benno looks energetic whenever he is with her. Softening his gaze, Mark admits that he also feels the same way. He finishes his thought, stating that he enjoys talking with her too. Mark smiles, noting that while she causes worry and work, they think about her every day. He reflects that she slipped into their lives before he even knew it. Mark confesses that her presence has become quite important to him. He asks if he is wrong, believing that Benno feels the same. Benno silently recalls watching over Mine as she slept peacefully in the carriage. Overwhelmed by the truth, Benno covers his face with his hand in defeat. He ruffles his hair, groaning that his gentlemanly reputation is exaggerated and calling Mark irritating. Benno abruptly stands up and decides to leave, asking if they need to be somewhere. He clenches his fist at his side and mutters a denial. Punching Mark lightly on the chest, Benno drags him along to go drinking. Mark smiles warmly and agrees to join him with pleasure. At the tavern, Benno insists he is still angry while chugging his drink, though Mark knows better. The guild master slams his hands onto the table with a thunderous crash, shouting Mine's name and startling Benno in the background. He rants that hearing about Mine from Frida has convinced him of her necessity, refusing to accept her employment with the Gilberta company. Lost in a delusion of the two girls working happily together, he begs Mine to reconsider, but she flatly rejects him with a smile. Desperate to keep the conversation going, the guildmaster insists she will change her mind once she gets to know Frida better. He launches into a story about Frida recovering from a fever, praising her vitality and noting that Mine is the first girl she talks to with joy. Continuing his tale, he recalls walking with a young Frida who seemed to admire the beauty of nature by pointing at a tree. However, her small finger was not pointing at the branches, but directly at the ground beneath it. To his shock, she had spotted a dropped coin, her eyes sparkling with the discovery of money rather than nature. He then describes taking her to a concert, believing she was entranced by the beautiful music echoing through the hall. Watching her intense focus on the performance, he mistook her concentration for a deep appreciation of the fine arts. Later that night, he heard a strange rhythmic clinking sound coming from behind her door. He discovered her counting coins in the dark, realizing the symphony she enjoyed was the sound of money piling up. The guildmaster confesses he couldn't take it anymore, recalling the time she was bedridden with the devouring fever. He desperately urged her to hold on, promising that a new magic tool would arrive shortly to save her. When he offered to sing a lullaby or tell a fairy tale to comfort her, she struggled to make a different request. Her eyes sparkling with feverish intensity, she asked him to recount the details of a major business deal he had recently closed. Just as he finished the story, the magic tool arrived, and she recovered instantly, energized by the tale of profit. He fondly explains that she stayed tough to avoid worrying him, though he admits she has always been that way. Blushing with pride, he declares her the most wonderful child while Mine watches with a blank expression. Realizing he has been gushing uncontrollably, the guild master covers his red cheeks in sudden embarrassment. Mine gently observes that he truly loves his granddaughter, catching him off guard. She praises Frida for having his excellence and notes that he recognized her talent sooner than anyone else. Moved by her words, the guildmaster admits he only wanted to recruit Mine to see Frida smile again. He pauses in reflection, realizing that his motivation goes beyond simple profit. With a serious expression, he concludes that it is actually Frida who would want to see Mine smile. Mine is left confused by this statement as the conversation wraps up. Later, walking back, Benno comments that Mine handled the old man surprisingly well despite his ramblings. He notes that the guildmaster was so taken aback by her responses about Frida that he didn't know what to say. Mine laughs it off, stating she simply spoke her mind as they approached their destination. Mark welcomes the pair back as they step through the door, ending the excursion. The guildmaster reflects on the meeting, noting that he was forceful yet Mine remained kind. He muses that meeting Mine might be even better for Frida than he originally realized, envisioning them baking together. Sitting down at his desk to work, he prepares to write with a satisfied hum. He pauses mid-action, a sudden realization washing over him as silence fills the room. Despair sinks in as he realizes he was so engrossed in talking about Frida that he forgot to actually recruit Mine. Frida knocks on the door with pound cake, cheerfully announcing that Mine got her good. She offers to share the cake, but the guildmaster tries to bring up the product evaluation she previously gave. Frida smiles sweetly, telling him she simply thought it would be nice to spend some time with him. The two sit down to enjoy tea and cake together, sharing a warm moment of family bonding. Gil calls out to a distracted Delia, who is completely absorbed in mumbling to herself. He shouts her name right in her ear, causing her to jump with a startled squeak. An argument instantly erupts as Gil demands to know why she ignored him and Delia yells back about the noise. Gil's anger fades as he notices the object capturing her attention and asks what she is holding. He realizes she is reading the picture book Bible and teases that her intense focus makes her just like Mine. Delia defensively snaps that she printed this page herself and needs to take the review seriously for Mine. She turns her back to him and begins to read aloud about the solitary god of darkness. Gil tries to snatch the book, claiming seniority, but Delia slaps his hand away with a fierce refusal. Defeated by her intensity, Gil grumbles and agrees to back off for now. Delia returns to her study, her brow furrowed in concentration as she stares at the text. A silent moment passes as she struggles to decode the symbols on the page. She slowly pieces together the words for the god of darkness and the goddess of light. A realization strikes her as she connects the terms to deduce the meaning of night. She stares blankly at the next section, her progress hitting a sudden wall. Frustration boils over as she slams the table and groans loudly at the difficulty of the task. Throwing her hands up, she yells that it is unfair to expect so much when she has only just started learning. The outburst lingers in the air as she stares down in defeat. Delia shifts her attention to Fran, calling out to the head priest's attendant. Fran confirms that if the weather holds, Sister Mine is expected to return tomorrow. Delia acknowledges the news with a brief, "I see," before attempting to start a conversation. Fran cuts her off with an apology, stating he must leave immediately to assist the high priest. Left alone again, Delia watches him leave with a look of sullen annoyance. Seeking company, she peeks around a doorframe and calls out to Rosina. Rosina is visible inside, deeply focused on her own tasks and ignoring the intrusion. Delia realizes that Rosina is buried under heaps of work and cannot be disturbed. Returning to her studies, Delia forces herself to read the names of the goddess of water and god of fire. She points a trembling finger at the next set of symbols, trying to decipher the meaning. Her patience snaps completely, a growl of pure frustration escaping her throat. She flips the book shut and screams that she simply doesn't know how to read all of this yet. Exhausted and defeated, Delia rests her head on her arms, staring blankly into space. Delia paces anxiously as she waits for the moment to deliver her report. She clutches the paper tightly, her determination outweighing her nervousness. The door creaks open, revealing the person she has been waiting for. Delia calls out Gil's name, perhaps spotting him first in the doorway. Mine turns in surprise, recognizing Delia's voice and calling her name. Delia stammers nervously, starting to explain that she wanted to ask something. Mine tilts her head with a hum, silently encouraging the girl to continue. Losing her cool, Delia shouts that she is talking about the book report Mine assigned to her. She admits she had Gil help with the hard parts, and Mine asks if she managed to read it all. Delia confesses she understands the joy of reading now, as she couldn't bear not knowing what happens next. A wide grin breaks across her face as she shares the wonder she found inside the story. The high priest warns Mine to be extremely careful outside, as she could be targeted at any moment. Mine explains to Benno and Lutz that she is devising protective measures in response to the priest's warning. Benno listens with a skeptical look, acknowledging the reasoning but dreading the execution. Mine dramatically unveils her legendary disguise, striking a pose in a bizarre getup that confuses everyone. She clarifies that she actually wants sunglasses, lamenting that she doesn't possess a pair to complete the look. Undeterred by the silence, Mine rummages through her supplies to show off her other ideas. She holds up black paper cutouts intended to shield her eyes from the light. Next, she presents triangular paper ears and a crude hand-drawn mask as additional options. Lutz chimes in with a smile, thinking she would actually look good in sunglasses. Mine dons the paper mask and asks for their verdict, confident she is now unrecognizable. Benno bluntly tells her it's rude and that she looks like a thug. He points out that if her goal was to stand out, she has succeeded brilliantly. Mine ignores the criticism and introduces her next scheme, the Chosen One plan. Benno looks exhausted as he asks if there are seriously more ideas to hear. Mine explains the plan to find a body double who will dress exactly like her to decoy enemies. She excitedly proposes digging a tunnel connecting the temple to her house and the company. Benno counters that finding a body double with her specific proportions is a tall order. He then asks the practical question of who exactly would dig this massive tunnel. Benno yells at her to stop the nonsense, while Mine sulks that Damuel refused to help too. Losing his patience, Benno flicks Mine hard on the forehead. He orders her to abandon the ridiculous ideas and just act normal for once. Mine gets sidetracked, wondering how she can impress the high priest instead. Lutz sighs, agreeing that Master Benno is right this time. Mine mutters that she needs a disguise that even the high priest won't be able to see through. Benno asks if she is finally admitting her mistake, and she reluctantly agrees. Mine drifts into a fantasy where she can read books in peace because no one recognizes her. She realizes she should be pitching these ideas to the high priest rather than Benno. Snapping back to reality, she puts on her fake glasses and mustache again. A gray priest greets Sister Mine as she enters the workshop to check on progress. The priest is surprised to see her, while Mine admits she can't see a thing through her disguise. Gil frantically apologizes to Mine for spilling ink all over a stack of paper. Mine turns to Fran wearing the ink-stained sheet over her face, asking how she looks. Fran realizes the disguise is nothing more than a giant ink blot obscuring her features. He stares in confusion, unsure of how to respond to such a bizarre fashion statement. Mine proudly whips off the paper, revealing that the cutouts act as makeshift sunglasses. She strikes a pose and asks if her disguise was a success, startling Gil in the process. Delia helps wipe the ink from Mine's face as Mine cheerfully thanks her for the assistance. Sylvester approaches Mine, asking why she doesn't seem very happy despite the antics. Fran concurs with the observation but strictly reminds Mine to be more careful in the future. Sylvester pokes Mine's cheek, claiming that avoiding danger is actually quite easy. Mine looks dead inside, realizing she is about to endure yet another lecture about her safety. Sylvester cheerfully suggests she should just yell, "Poi," as loud as she can to scare baddies away. He slams the door open to demonstrate his point, earning a scolding from Fran for his lack of mindfulness. Mine suddenly has an epiphany, realizing that making a loud noise is the key to her safety. She celebrates the idea of a safety alarm, calling it the classic item for every weakling. The high priest looks confused by the modern term, questioning what exactly a safety alarm is. Mine loudly thanks Sylvester for the inspiration and declares she must discuss it with the high priest immediately. She explains to the high priest that she needs a device capable of producing a loud noise when she is in danger. In the background, Sylvester leans on a grumpy gill, muttering that he is bored. The high priest looks exasperated, realizing Mine hasn't thought the practicalities through at all. Sylvester continues to annoy Gil with repeated pokes, chanting that he is bored. Mine proposes carrying a harspiel, but the high priest points out that the bulk would only make her easier to catch. She asks if there are hand-sized harspiels available, gesturing to show the small scale she requires. The next day, a strange and wheezing whistling sound echoes through the air. Mine presents a leaf whistle to the group, demonstrating it as her portable noise solution. The high priest hears the sound and rushes out in a panic, fearing a disaster at the orphanage. He arrives breathless, only to find the noise is coming from a harmless source. The orphans and Mine are happily blowing on leaf whistles, creating a chaotic symphony of noise. The high priest scolds Mine, telling her it would be much easier for her to simply yell for help instead. Mine apologizes as the children continue to play, resigning herself to receiving another lecture. Tully modestly explains she only patched her old clothing, but Mine is completely amazed by her sister's handiwork. Upon closer inspection, Mine notices the crooked seams but insists it is still amazing regardless of the flaws. Shocked by the skill required, Mine admits with a gasp that she couldn't even manage that much herself. Tully scolds Mine for being proud of her lack of skill while painfully putting her in a headlock. Looking out over the town, Tully turns serious and brings up an important point about their future. She leans in close to insist that Mine absolutely needs to learn sewing too. Tully lectures her on the endless mending and winter padding required for the house, causing Mine to groan in despair. Realizing that sewing will eat into her precious reading time, Mine collapses onto the floor in defeat. She immediately tries to outsource the work by offering to pay Tully, but her sister rejects the lazy proposal instantly. Desperate to avoid the needle, Mine doubles down with a bright smile and promises to pay very well. Tully counters that if money is involved, Mine should hire a professional, leaving Mine momentarily stumped. Mine stares intently at her sister and declares that she wants Tully specifically to do the job. She shamelessly admits that hiring Tully allows her to be unreasonable, earning a frustrated glare from her sister. Sensing the tension, Mine quickly backpedals and claims she is only half joking about her demands. She beams with affection, explaining that she wants clothes made by Tully simply because her sister made them. Tully is struck silent, blushing slightly as the genuine warmth of Mine's request sinks in. Accepting the challenge, Tully decides she must improve her skills to accommodate Mine's unreasonable requests. Overjoyed by the agreement, Mine shouts her love and tackles Tully in a tight hug. The narration reflects that this innocent promise was the spark that started everything. In the process of pursuing her books, Mine somehow ended up becoming a shrine maiden along the way. Tully examines the complex fabric of Mine's robes, admitting the tailoring is far beyond her current skill level. Uncomfortable in the formal gear, Mine asks if she can change back, but Tully is still fixated on the details. Realizing she zoned out, Tully apologizes for keeping Mine waiting while she studied the clothes. Her curiosity unsatisfied, Tully eagerly asks to inspect the lining once Mine takes the robes off. Mine happily agrees to the request, glad to give Tully a rare opportunity to study such fine work. As she holds the robes, Tully feels a pang of sadness realizing Mine now wears incredible outfits she didn't make. Sensing the mood, Mine loudly declares that nothing will ever beat the dress Tully made for her. Tully skeptically points out that the high-quality shrine maiden robes seem much more comfortable to wear. Mine struggles to explain that the robes are just a uniform and weren't made specifically for her with love. Understanding dawns in Tully's eyes as she realizes exactly what Mine is trying to say. Tully realizes she wasn't left behind while Mine chased her dreams, but that they are both moving forward. With renewed determination, Tully vows to herself that she will become even better at sewing. She turns to Mine with a bright smile, confident that she can achieve her own goals too. Tully reaches out to grasp Mine's hand, ensuring she will always be there to support her reckless sister. Their hands clasp together in a promise, solidifying the bond that will hold them together no matter what. Mine chants rhythmically while stretching her arms, unaware that Fran is watching her strange ritual from the doorway. Fran interrupts the performance to ask Sister Mine exactly what kind of dance she is doing. Mine freezes in pure shock, turning around to face her attendant with a flushed face. She frantically waves her hands to dismiss the embarrassment, explaining that it is radio calisthenics rather than a dance. Fran accepts the explanation and politely asks if she is heading to see the high priest. Mine slumps in defeat, realizing with horror that he definitely saw her embarrassing display. A rare, amused smirk plays on Fran's lips as he turns to leave the room. Standing before the high priest's desk, Fran concludes his daily report on Mine's activities. A subtle, knowing smile crosses Ferdinand's face as he listens to the attendant. He prompts Fran to continue, sensing that there is something interesting left unsaid. Fran reveals that there was indeed one curious incident just before he left to report. Ferdinand taps his chin thoughtfully, noting that she has Haarspiel practice scheduled for today. A devious grin spreads across his face as he declares that the timing is absolutely perfect. Musical notes float through the air as the scene shifts to the music room. Mine plays her Haarspiel with deep concentration, unaware of the trap Ferdinand has set. Ferdinand interrupts the practice to inquire about the peculiar song and dance he heard rumors of. He demands that she sing it so he can transcribe the melody, leaving Mine completely stunned. Mine shoots a betrayed glare at Fran while Rosina watches the exchange in confusion. Forced by Ferdinand's terrifyingly pleasant smile, Mine awkwardly begins to sing the calisthenics tune. Ferdinand listens intently as the simple melody of the exercise routine fills the noble room. He stares her down with a sharp gaze, demanding to know the official name of this composition. Mine stammers that it is for health, reluctantly revealing the title, Radio Calisthenics. Ferdinand ignores the strange name and decides to consecrate the song to Anwax, the god of growth. He fails to suppress a laugh as Mine asks in horror if he is seriously turning her exercise into a hymn. Mine looks to Fran for salvation, but he offers only a polite excuse and looks away. Rosina picks up the melody on her Haarspiel, filling the room with the newly born holy song. Ferdinand watches the performance with a relaxed expression, his usual tension melting away. Rosina observes the high priest's face, struck by the rarity of his peaceful demeanor. She whispers to Fran that she has never seen the high priest enjoy himself this much before. Ferdinand smiles softly, his burden momentarily lifted by the absurdity of Mine's creation. Fran agrees with Rosina, expressing his genuine gratitude for having Mine in the temple. The temple bell tolls loudly to signal the time, and Mine rushes to wrap up the session. Fran and Rosina follow their mistress with warm smiles, happy to serve such a unique individual. Gunther bursts into booming laughter, his face flushed with pure joy as he grins from ear to ear. His family stares in confusion, unable to understand why he is being so incredibly loud today. Gunther cheerfully reminds them that they rarely get the chance to spend the entire day home together. Calling it the rarest of opportunities, he eagerly asks everyone what they should do to celebrate. He points a finger dramatically, declaring it family day and insisting they leave Lutz out of it. Tully looks at him skeptically, surprised that he has more energy than ever on his day off. The family brainstorms options, debating whether to visit the market or go for a picnic. Mine's eyes light up at the idea, thinking that walking around the market together sounds like fun. Tully worries about Mine's stamina, but Mine confidently insists she can walk to the market just fine. Suddenly, Gunther lets out a massive, unbridled yawn that interrupts the excitement. Mine stares up at him silently, her large eyes catching the undeniable sign of fatigue. Tully laughs that he was too excited to sleep, while Mine points out that he is yawning like crazy. Mine steps forward and gently tugs on her father's sleeve to get his attention. She pulls him back towards the living area, signaling a shift in the day's plans. Looking up at her parents, Mine suggests that they should just relax at home for the day. Gunther looks surprised by the change, but Mine reassures him that he doesn't need to worry. She claims she has been busy herself and thinks that taking it easy would be best for everyone. Tully agrees enthusiastically and begins massaging Gunther's shoulders to help him unwind. Defeated by their kindness, Gunther smiles and accepts their decision to stay in. He leans back and closes his eyes, admitting that this might be the perfect way to pass the time. The girls affectionately call out to their dad, their voices full of warmth. Overcome with emotion, Gunther tears up and declares how lucky he is to have such wonderful daughters. The conversation shifts as Mine curiously asks her mother what she was like as a baby. Gunther bursts into laughter again, claiming that Daddy is the best person to tell that story. He begins his tale with a fond expression, ready to recount the past. Gunther expresses his deep gratitude, stating how glad he is to be a part of this family. Later that night, a soft voice whispers into the darkness to check if Mine is still awake. Effa admits she wants to hear more about Mine's life, asking about her bookmaking and the temple. Mine explains that progress is slow but steady, thanks to the help of Lutz and the attendants. Snuggling close, she adds that the high priest keeps getting upset with her despite the help. Effa smiles gently, reminding Mine that she is incredibly fortunate to have all those people around her. Mine gazes back at her mother, letting the warmth of those words sink into her heart. As the family sleeps peacefully together, Mine silently hopes that this happiness never changes. Fran stands attentively in the background, waiting for a signal from his charge. He notices a shift in Mine's demeanor, realizing something is happening. Mine strikes the dramatic Watarizora Tsubamemaru pose, holding her hand to her cheek in distress. Fran instantly recognizes the troubled pose as Mine's subtle way of asking her attendants for help. He deduces that she wants something she cannot say out loud, but he struggles to identify exactly what it is. The pressure mounts as Fran realizes she expects him to figure it out and resolve the issue himself. Benno notices the strange atmosphere and asks what is going on, while Fran remains frozen. Internally screaming, Fran admits to himself that he has absolutely no clue what she wants. Mine taps her cheek repeatedly with her finger, trying to provide a clearer physical hint. She lets out a heavy sigh while cradling her cheek, looking visibly uncomfortable and pained. A sudden shock hits Fran as the fear of failure strikes him like a bolt of lightning. He gazes at her in terror, wondering if he has already disappointed her beyond repair. His mind spirals, imagining her judging him as an incompetent head attendant for missing the sign. He fears she is thinking that she cannot rely on temple attendants, imagining her turning away in disgust. Overcome with panic, Fran breaks his silence and desperately begs Mine for a small hint. Mine finally speaks, calmly asking Benno how far the concept of dental hygiene has progressed in this city. She explains the symptoms of cavities, but Benno looks at her like she is making words up. Benno confirms he brushes his teeth for appearances, but implies he knows nothing of preventive care. She stares him down with a serious expression, asking if he knows that sugar actively destroys teeth. Lutz is horrified by the sudden revelation that sweet foods cause cavities faster than anything else. Mine clarifies that while they don't know what bacteria are, sugar is effectively the enemy they need to watch out for. Lutz connects the dots, realizing this explains why he has heard that fruit juice is bad for teeth. Mine grimly warns that cavities do not heal naturally and can eventually cost a person their life. She realizes with horror that she has been neglecting this while giving sugary treats to the orphans as divine gifts. Striking a dramatic pose, she declares her duty to teach everyone about the dangers of cavities and how to prevent them. Fran clutches his chest in relief, realizing her distress was only about the orphan's health and not his failure. Mine turns her intense gaze to Benno, insisting that this dental crisis concerns him as a merchant as well. She reveals she was planning to sell him recipes for sugary desserts to teach the world the joy of sweets. However, she argues it would be irresponsible to give everyone cavities without providing a way to treat them. Benno interrupts with a serious look, telling her to set aside her concerns for the children for a moment. Mine notes that the high cost of sugar restricts her recipes to the nobility, a fact Benno readily accepts. She cries out that it is unfair, assuming that nobles must have magic tools to easily cure their cavities. Benno counters by asking what she thinks commoners do when they suffer from tooth decay. He grimly confirms that without magic, there is only one proven method to deal with the pain. Benno explains the brutal procedure of wrapping a sturdy thread tightly around the base of the rotten tooth. He vividly mimes tying the string to a doorknob and slamming it shut, causing Mine to shriek in terror. Mine clings to Fran for safety, trembling as the horrific imagery of the extraction plays out in her mind. She wails in despair, unable to cope with the frightening reality of commoner dentistry. Her mouth falls open in her distress, revealing the dark, rotting cavity that has been tormenting her. The group stares in silence at the undeniable proof of her condition. Benno calmly deduces that she definitely has a cavity, understanding her sudden interest in dental hygiene. He looms over her with a serious gaze, ordering her to open her mouth wide right now. Mine clamps her mouth shut and shakes her head violently, refusing to submit to the treatment. Benno yells at her to stop whining and take the medicine, reminding her that she called cavities life-threatening. He threatens to fetch the shop's strongest thread for the traditional extraction if she keeps resisting. Fran exhales a long sigh of relief, realizing that his skills as an attendant were never the problem. Mine weakly calls out to Lutz, her voice trembling in the quiet street. Alarmed by her unsteady state, Lutz rushes over and demands to know what happened. Mine wobbles on her feet and claims she just had a bad dream, though Lutz worries someone at the temple heard her. Lutz scolds her for sleeping on the job, his relief washing over him as he realizes she is safe. Seeking comfort, Mine buries her face in his chest while Lutz awkwardly pats her back. He gently asks if the nightmare was really that bad, sensing her lingering fear. Mine recalls the terror of her past life's death, crushed under an avalanche of books. She laments dying right after getting her dream job, regretting the full life she left behind. The deepest pain surfaces as she realizes she never even got the chance to say goodbye to her mother. Mine accidentally mutters the words, "Say goodbye," aloud, quickly trying to dismiss it when Lutz questions her. Lutz stares at her with a sharp, contemplative gaze, sensing there is more to her slip-up. Breaking the tension, he tells her to wait at home because he has something he wants to give her. Mine watches confused as Lutz turns and prepares to head off in a different direction. When she asks where he is going, Lutz explains he needs to collect the gift and it might take some time. He reveals his destination is the forest, surprising Mine with the detour. Lutz playfully refuses to tell her what he is getting, insisting she just has to wait and see. Mine decides to tag along since the path goes by her house anyway, ignoring his suggestion to wait. They arrive at a breathtaking clearing filled with white flowers, leaving Mine in awe. Lutz explains that this hidden spot is a bit away from the river, a place Mine never knew existed. Mine immediately starts plotting to turn the beautiful flowers into bookmarks, her mind racing with crafting ideas. Lutz laughs and notes that she is finally back to normal, relieved to see her obsession with books return. Remembering the purpose of the trip, Mine asks him what exactly he wanted to give her. Lutz presents a single white flower to her with a confident flourish. He asks her if she has ever heard of the language of flowers. Mine feigns ignorance to avoid suspicion, though she internally recognizes the concept from her past life. Lutz recites the meaning with a serious expression, "Until we meet again, I'll be thinking of you." He reveals that Master Benno was the one who taught him that particular phrase. Mine internally deadpants, realizing Benno only taught him that to help him charm women into buying flowers. Lutz explains he chose it because she seemed heartbroken about leaving someone behind in her dream. He looks her in the eye and speaks from the heart, addressing the fear of separation she carries. Lutz promises that even if they part ways, he will never forget her until they meet again. Beaming with a bright smile, he declares that she will always be his precious partner. Mine stares at him, completely moved by his sincere and clumsy kindness. She realizes he is totally oblivious to the romantic implication but blushes furiously nonetheless. Looking down at the flower, Mine admits to herself that she shares his sentiment entirely. She cheerfully thanks him, promising to take good care of the flowers he gave her. Suddenly realizing the time, they panic and rush home, fearing Gunther's wrath for being late. Mine sleeps peacefully with the flower pressed in her book, no longer afraid of the bad dreams. Mine reflects on her time as an apprentice shrine maiden, noting that she has been serving in the role for quite a while now. Walking alongside Lutz, she beams with happiness and remarks on how wonderful it is to be surrounded by so many people. Mine freezes in her tracks, staring in bewildered silence as she realizes the people around her are actually walking, talking animals. A dog-eared Lutz asks if she needs a day off, while a confused Mine desperately asks why everyone has transformed. Lutz insists that being animals is perfectly normal, causing Mine to wonder if she has slipped into a fantasy world. She gulps nervously but decides to resign herself to the situation, accepting the strange reality for what it is. Mine analyzes her attendants, noting that Fran is a gentle giraffe and Lutz is a golden retriever, while Delia is a cow who always says moo. Overcome with curiosity, Mine asks to touch Gil's tail, but the catboy hisses aggressively and rejects her. A voice calls out to Mine, signaling the arrival of the rest of her acquaintances in their animal forms. Mine marvels at the sight of the high priest as a horse, Benno as a wolf, and the others as various cute creatures. Her eyes sparkle with pure delight as she shouts in excitement at the adorable menagerie before her. Mine admits that she never understood the appeal of anthropomorphic animals in her past life, but she definitely gets it now. The high priest questions her strange reaction, making Mine realize she is the odd one out in this fluffy paradise. She laughs nervously and agrees that they must fix this, knowing the strict high priest would never accept such an absurdity. A rabbit-eared Tully cheerfully points out the obvious inconsistency, asking Mine why she is the only human left. The horse high priest calmly suggests that instead of changing everyone back, it would be much easier for Mine to simply join them. Mine is dumbfounded by the suggestion as the group immediately begins a serious conference to determine her spirit animal. Lutz suggests a boar while Tully argues for a rabbit, but Mine is horrified by the idea of becoming a wild pig. The high priest solemnly sides with the boar choice, noting that she charges forward recklessly whenever books or family are involved. The decision is declared unanimous, and Mine is instantly transformed into a round little pig against her will. Mine screams in protest as she looks at her new form, while the others laugh and agree that it suits her perfectly. She wails for the gods to save her, drowning in a sea of laughter as the nightmare reaches its peak. Mine jolts awake at her desk, deadpanning in disbelief that her subconscious really ended the dream with such a cliché punchline. Fran and Lutz look at her with concern, telling her that she seemed to be having a terrible nightmare during her nap. They scold her for worrying them given her frail health, while Mine sighs and accepts her return to reality. Delia complains loudly about Mine's rudeness, but Mine just giggles, thinking that Delia is exactly the same as the mooing cow in her dream.